Top 10 Historical Black Figures That Changed American History. Black History Month is a time to reflect and recall, particularly at a time when the country is reminded of the discrimination that African Americans have faced and continue to face from their fellow citizens. February is a month dedicated to honoring the contributions of former slaves and civil rights leaders who helped end slavery and segregation and gave African Americans hope. In celebration of Black History Month, in no particular order, here are 10 of the most influential African Americans in history. Before we move on to the next step, first subscribe my YouTube channel for more videos. Number 10. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. is possibly the most renowned African American in history. His legacy is commemorated with a government holiday on the third Monday of each January. His civil rights advocacy in the 1950s and 1960s is covered in detail in textbooks. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. established his influence in the United States by teaching peaceful methods of resisting segregation. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. by a white man in 1968 provoked worldwide protests and grief. In 1951, King enrolled at Boston University to pursue a doctorate in systematic theology. King worked as an assistant preacher at Boston's historic 12th Baptist Church with William Hunter Hester while pursuing his doctorate. Number 9. Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was dubbed the "Mother of the Freedom Movement" after refusing to move to the back of a bus after being ordered to give up her seat to a white passenger. The couple who were targeted in the incident have purchased a letter written by Parks recounting the 1957 bombing of their neighbor's home at auction. The Reverend Robert Greets and his wife Jeannie purchased Parks' letter documenting the bombing of their home, according to Alabama State University. Rosa Parks grins during a ceremony in Detroit, Michigan, on November 28, 1999. Where she was awarded the Congressional Medal of Freedom. Parks, who launched the modern civil rights movement by refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man, died of natural causes in her Detroit home on Monday, October 24, 2005, at the age of 92. After being discovered folded and wrapped in rubber bands in a courthouse box, yellowing court records from the arrests of Rosa Parks. Number 8. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, born Cassius Clay in 1942, is regarded as one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time in the sport of boxing. In the early 1960s, he changed his name from Cassius Clay, which he connected with slavery, to a new Muslim name that reflected a new black separatist movement in the United States. In the first round of their heavyweight title fight in New York's Madison Square Garden on March 22, 1967, Zora Fali, left, moves in on champion Muhammad Ali. Clay had risen to the top of the contenders for Sonny Liston's title by late 1963. On February 25, 1964, the battle was planned to take place in Miami Beach. Liston had a commanding presence, a dominant fighter with a criminal record and mob affiliations. Many African Americans and others were impressed by Ali's example. When he declined induction, however, he became possibly the most despised man in the country and got numerous death threats. People who backed Ali at the time, including as sports columnist Jerry Eisenberg, whose columns defended Ali's choice not to serve, were also threatened. Ali was warned by the judge that he would have to refile his plea following the induction hearing. Number 7. Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass chronicles his life and subsequent escape from slavery in his autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, which was essential to the abolitionist cause and the eventual objective of ending slavery. Douglass was the most well-known black man in the United States throughout the Civil War era, a conscience of the abolitionist movement and beyond, and a popular choice for encapsulating American values, flaws, and challenges. His vehement 1852 oration in Rochester, New York is regarded as a high point in the canon of American oratory. On Wednesday, June 19, 2013, a bronze monument of 19th-century orator and writer Frederick Douglass was dedicated in the Emancipation Hall of the United States Visitor Center on Capitol Hill in Washington. Number 6. W.E.B. Du Bois. Before Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, W.E.B. Du Bois created a reputation for himself as a novelist, academic, and activist. Du Bois was a founding member of the NAACP, which is still regarded as one of the most important organizations for African American rights and advocacy. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, an educator and writer who also served as the American delegation's head, speaks to the Congress of Partisans of Peace on April 22, 1949, at the Salle Pleyel in Paris. Between April and November 1900, Dubois was the primary organizer of the exhibit of American Negroes at the Exposition Universelle in Paris, for which he curated a collection of 363 photographs aimed at commemorating the lives of African Americans at the turn of the century and challenging racist caricatures and stereotypes of the time. For his work as a compiler of the materials, which are currently preserved at the Library of Congress, he received a gold medal. Number 5. Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson, like Muhammad Ali in the 1960s, was one of the most influential sports icons of his time. Robinson was the first African American to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers in Major League Baseball, breaking the league's color barrier. In 1997, his jersey number, 42, was retired by all MLB teams, meaning no player could ever wear it again. In the 8th inning of the World Series game opener at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, NY, on September 28, 1955, Brooklyn Dodgers third baseman Jackie Robinson steals home and slides under catcher Yogi Berra's mitt. As a steal is made, pinch hitter Frank Kellert stands at bat. Robinson is declared safe by umpire Bill Sums. Number 4. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman, who was born into slavery in 1822 and escaped in 1849, became famed for her efforts to aid fugitive slaves. She was an important part of the Underground Railroad, a hidden route for escaped slaves to escape to the north through slave-holding states. Moses was another name for Tubman. On Monday, March 25, 2019, the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington exhibited a hitherto unseen portrait of abolitionist and Underground Railroad conductor Harriet Tubman, circa 1868. Number 3. Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth, like Douglass and Tubman, was born into slavery and subsequently escaped to become an abolitionist and women's rights campaigner. During the Civil War, she was instrumental in recruiting African American soldiers to fight for the Union, Northern states, against the Confederacy, Southern states. She was a memorist and a devoted feminist, as well as an anti-slavery campaigner and Frederick Douglass's comrade. Truth was able to fund her efforts in these locations by selling many copies of this image. Obama expressed her hope that Truth, the first black woman to be honored with a bust in the Capitol, would be pleased to witness a descendant of slaves as the country's first black First Lady. Number 2. Langston Hughes. During the Harlem Renaissance, Langston Hughes was a poet and novelist. Hughes' first collection of poetry, The Weary Blues, and other works helped to define the economic plight of African Americans in the lowest classes. In the foreground, Langston Hughes is seen in his boyhood village of Lawrence, Kansas, around 1914. Hughes moved to Lincoln, Illinois, to live with his mother a year later. In the 1920s, he relocated to New York and became a literary pillar of the Harlem Renaissance cultural movement. Number 1. Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou's autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, is one of the most well-known African American authors. It is a coming-of-age story about how prejudice influenced a little girl, shaping her into the proud author she would later become. Angelou collaborated with Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders to put an end to segregation for good. Maya Angelou, who climbed from poverty, segregation, and the toughest of childhoods to become a powerhouse on stage, screen, and page, died at her home in Winston-Salem on Wednesday morning, May 28, 2014. I hope you find this video helpful. If you liked the video, do like and subscribe it, as really helps our channel, and do remember to give your feedback in the comments below. See you in the next video with some more interesting peoples and facts.